right, technical difficulties, but we're back in order. Right on. I'll give everybody a chance to settle down. Everybody got a book. There's some books back there, some pieces of paper, a pen. Hopefully everybody got a pen and a piece of paper. We'll kind of go through this. We're at the 4 steps. So let's look at page 64, right? We're going to get in this quite fast. So we did the 3rd step prayer last week. We kind of covered the idea there that they're presenting of the possibility of a relationship that could be obtained and what that kind of looks like, the benefits of it, going through this process, right? So after the 3rd step prayer, they kind of said, next we lunged out on a vigorous course of action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, meaning this is the first step in actually bringing this process about, right? And formulating or kind of having this experience, right? Because you could do steps 1, 2, and 3 every day for the rest of your life. Isn't really going to do nothing, right? You're making a decision to carry through with the rest of the course of action, and now you're going to be up against the biggest obstacle that you've kind of looked at most of your life, but never really dealt with. Anybody have any idea what that is? You look at that person probably every morning in the mirror. Self, right? So, they talk about here, though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless that once, followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to cause and conditions. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. So we see the transition from step 3 to step 4 is quite fast and to the point, right? The build-up from page 44 to 63 took a while, right? Like getting the mind kind of set on kind of the obstacles that we have within our thinking. And then they looked at the human condition from page 60 to 62, and then the kind of format of their experience of having made a decision and go through from the top of page 63 to the 3rd step prayer. From the 3rd step prayer on, they're going to show us how to obtain this thing. So here we go. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no inventory usually goes broke. Regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding, fact-facing process. Same thing. Commercial, any kind of ability to take inventory, right? So you want to underline that. A fact-finding, fact-facing process is an effort to discover the truth about the stock and trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsalvageable goods. Whoa, there we go. To get rid of them promptly without regret. Right? You'll see how this process that they're gonna teach us is exactly this. Right? As we go through it, it's a process of being able to see the things within ourselves that caused our failure. A process of being able to look at how they're no longer kind of beneficial to us. Put exact nature of what they did on page 60 kind of too. They talked about we stepped on the toes of our fellows and they retaliated, right? How we set the ball rolling, and really we don't know how we do that, right? So here they talk about, so it's worth reading again. One object is to disclose damaged or unsalvageable goods, to get rid of them promptly without regret. If the owner of the business, if we're going to be successful, we cannot fool ourselves about values, right? We did exactly the same thing with our lives, right? We took stock honestly. Lives is what's the basis of our lives is our thinking, yes? We're some result of all our thinking. How many people feel comfortable and happy about that, right? So your life is exactly what you created based on your thinking, your emotions, and your ideas, and the things that govern you. Yeah, that's a lot of fun, eh? Okay. So we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stocks. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. So what are we going to be looking for? What's the first thing we're looking for? Well, what did we just read? How many people are here right now? 2 people. How many people are here right now? There we go. Okay, so how many people were thinking while I was reading? Everybody, right? Okay. So let's all come back to the room. Right? Okay, it's kind of participation. I'm not just doing this for me, hopefully, right? Participate. I'll read something. I'll ask you a question, and you go, "Oh yeah, I've been following along. Can you ask it again?" Yeah, okay. We're used to going over things twice here, right? Twice. Twice. Yeah, 2 or 3 times. Okay, everybody, page 64. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup what caused our failure. What's the first thing we're going to do?
Search out our flaws.
Right? That caused our failure. It makes sense, right? If we're going to be successful in our lives, we got to find out the things that are not working that we kind of take great stock and value in. Being convinced that self manifests in various ways what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. That's that being convinced is kind of interesting. They used it a few times in here, right? It has to do with, one, being convinced that your life looks exactly the way it looks based on you, right? And also being convinced that there's something greater than ourselves working in our lives, and the experience of that as we go through this process is pretty cool. So what does manifested mean? The way it looks, how it presents itself, right? So what are we looking for? What we're looking for, which had defeated us, right? We considered as common manifestations. So there's an S on there. So we're going to look at a few things, right? We're going to look at resentment, fears, conduct, and harms. These are the things that had defeated us. The common manifestation of what? The human condition. Yes? It didn't say alcoholism. It said the human condition. Right? Everybody has these things, right? We don't hold the market on these things that we're going to talk about, or the failure of self-reliance, right? There's a lot of people out there. That's why we have jails, hospitals, divorce courts. Like, it goes on and on. How many different fellowships do we have, right? So how many people try to find a solution to the human dilemma? Gambling, sex, all that other stuff that we used to call a good time. Not so much fun anymore. Well, I don't know. Okay, we'll leave that alone. We'll look at that in step 6 later, okay? Right now, we'll just carry on. I don't want to start. What an order! I can't go through with it. Okay, so we're looking at the common manifestation. Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything. Look at the wording. From it stems all forms of spiritual disease. Where's the spiritual disease formulating or derived from?
From within.
So we're going to read it again really slowly, okay? It's interesting how we read something. I give you the answer. Right? And then I ask you a question, and then you start thinking. Why do you do that? Why do you start thinking? Because self, right? Because self. It's interesting how fast we go to default, right? So this is a yellow can. What color is this can? You look at blue, green. You look at the one in front of you, right? No, this can. Okay, ready? We'll start again. So we're looking for the common manifestations with an S. The first one we're looking at is resentment. Is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stems all forms of spiritual disease. Where's the spiritual malady or derivative or problem come from? Resentment. From resentments. That's the first thing. Then the second thing we're going to look at, notice it didn't say alcoholism. So, right? Because it's 2 separate things. We covered alcoholism on page 44, yes? In the preceding chapters, we learned the twofold kind of mental and physical, yes? The solution that we apply, we don't apply it to alcoholism because, right, we have a solution for it, right? We don't apply it to it. There's a big difference, right? So we're looking to have this thing removed through a psychic change or spiritual experience. We're not looking to deal with it for the rest of our lives. How many people want to deal with it for the rest of your life? How many people are looking for a life sentence recovery? How many people want the freedom to be free of this thing? That's what we have to offer here, right? There's total freedom from this thing based on a daily reprieve. So, from it stems all forms of spiritual disease. For we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we covered that, we've been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. So spiritual malady is an unexplainable event. They know it's present. It's caused by a lot of different things, and it's an internal thing. When you look up malady, a lot of us like to look up a specific word, what we think, but it's a whole bunch of words that cover an ailment that's present, but they're not too really sure what it's derived from. It's evident there's something there, right? And they use a lot of different words to describe it. And it took me a little while in recovery to realize that thesaurus is not a dictionary. See, these words mean the same thing. Look. No, they don't, right? This is the second time they used the word malady. The first time they used it was in association to what? One of the symptoms in alcoholism. That centers where? In the mind. It's an unexplainable event. That's why they say once a certain point is reached, right? Little or nothing can be done for this. We can't answer the riddle. We don't know why. Once a certain point is reached, we can't do nothing. So they call this condition a malady. Then they call it a phenomenon, right? An unexplainable event that seems to happen for people like us. Yes. Okay. So from it stems all forms of spiritual disease, which makes sense. If you're kind of anybody ever harbor a good resentment, is the heat on? Anybody? So when you kind of, could we open that door?
Yeah. Should be open.
So when you kind of harboring something that don't make you feel good, you ever notice it don't make you feel good? You ever notice your energy? And the more anybody watch news, after 2 days of watching news, you realize you're not feeling too good, and you're starting to talk to the TV. How many TV talkers here? Are you kidding me? Anybody ever talk to TV like that, or just me? Oh, just me. Yeah, sure. So we see it starts causing unease, something that starts happening within that kind of starts hitting all your instincts. But we'll look at that later. So, overcome mentally. In dealing with resentment, we set them on paper. What's after paper? Right, page 64. In dealing with resentment, we set them on paper. What's after paper? Period. It's important. Period. There's a period after. So that means stop. That's the first instruction, right? So because it doesn't say to do it, but it kind of makes sense that based on those who kind of took me through it, is the only prayer that we've been given access to so far is what? Third step prayer, and it kind of covers all the difficulties and challenges we're going to have, right? The bondage of self, the difficulties, right? All these things that are happening at an internal level, but we really don't know the scope of it. Now you start getting to see the scope of it because we're giving you the first instruction is just to write down people, places, and things with whom you're angry. So what we did is, what I was told is just take a piece of paper, fold it in half. So you got 4 sides to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 4 sides. Kind of makes sense. You sit down, you do the third step prayer, you read it, you look at the wording of it, the difficulties, bondage, and kind of, well, let's look at it, right? So here's the different areas that we're going to struggle with, right? So God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. So relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those that hope thy love, thy power, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We see that's a summary of the whole course of action. So the bondage of self and difficulties. So you sit there and you start writing out, you do the third step prayer and you start writing out who you're angry at. So we're going to do their inventory.
Yes.
Right? Anybody don't know who they're mad at? Because I have people say, because when I did this, I had a genius type mind, and they asked me to write out my resentment. I said, I don't got resentments. I didn't know what they were. And so my sponsor said, you got people to still get even with? I said, I got a couple. He says, let's start with those people. People to get even with. How about the people you were pissed off with or were angry? Okay, I could write those down. And then he says, write down whatever comes to mind. So that's the exercise. Why would I write down whatever comes to mind? It's kind of when it comes to this, my consciousness, we'll go here. presents something, you'll look at it, and what we'll do is analyze it to see if it's worth putting on paper or not. How many people done a 4-step here? How many people analyze it to see if it's worth putting on paper first? That's not the exercise, is it? It's to write down people. Well, I'm not mad at them anymore. Well, were you? Yes, then write it down. Did it come to mind? Yes, but. There's no but. It's yes. So we see right away the difficulties of self presenting itself. Just write down whatever comes to mind, and the struggle starts happening, right? And then when we start, so I put mom, dad, grade, kindergarten teacher, high school teacher. It doesn't matter how it reveals itself. You just allow it to reveal itself. And why you do it? And then as I was going along, I remember it was like, oh, my sister. I said, I'm not putting my sister down. I'm not mad at my sister. I spent 2 days of thinking I'm not putting my sister down. 2 days. I'm not sleeping. I'm not putting my sister down. I'm not putting, because there was guilt and shame around being resentful at her. But that's not the exercise. So I put my sister down, and about 10 names followed after that. So that one thing blocked all the rest of the things. It may sound kind of weird. And then some of the stories I start reliving. Is that the purpose of it? So then we remind ourselves what the purpose of the exercise is. Fact-facing process, right? Is to discover these things in myself that cause me problems. Would reliving the story cause me problems? So then I would interrupt it by doing the prayer, right? Maybe we'll do the prayer, go through it 3 times and then do the prayer. Let's relive it 3 times and then do the prayer. Well, we do that, right? That's because I'll try to fix it, and then we get locked, and it unlocks all these things. And so what happens is we don't apply prayer, and then you think it'll start becoming painful as the result of not applying the very thing that we're trying to seek access to, of getting access to power to create a change within our psyche, or the way we look at things, or the bondage of difficulties, right? So right away I start changing the story, because I'm used to playing the story all the way through. Anybody? When you're done with that story, what's a good thing to do?
Make it bigger and better.
Go to another story. And have you noticed when you start going through the stories, they start getting worse? And you start poisoning yourself? The toxicity starts to unreal. And then these things you realize are lying dormant. Like some of you are thinking of a resentment right now. I can just tell by the look on your face. Right? You started off with... Right? And then, so as soon as you become aware of that, it's to step back, do the prayer, and what's the exercise? It's not reliving and refeeling, right? It's just to visit these things within me that keep me hostage or keep me in bondage or create difficulties. Does that kind of make sense? And so I go through the whole thing. And it's kind of interesting. Like most of us, you should be good, 60, 70 for an average kind of medium alcoholic. But a beginner. But are you really, really like pissed off and don't know? Like 120? 167. So, and what's interesting is you put whatever comes to mind. Why is that? Well, I did a lot of different inventory, but this process, it's my consciousness that's telling me what's going on. So what happens is I sit there, these images or thoughts or these things will come to mind, and they'll be all mixed up, but I'll get snapshots of my life. Anybody? Mm-hmm. And so this one, the guy with the blue cap, I thought, wow, I've done... So I put the guy with the blue cap down. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? You heard the story before. But if you didn't, I know what I'm talking about, right? So it's funny, just the guy with the blue cap, right, creates the whole story behind that situation. Is that one thing that, for lack of better words, triggers the memory of all of these other this whole event that happened. That's why you ever notice with smells or certain situations, the deja vu, I've been here before or something, or you get a free-floating anxiety because what's going on here? And it's past events, right? Sometimes you get smells and situations, and it's funny how it could bring you way back to a situation. And sometimes before this process, there's a whole bunch of emotion attached to it. So that means it's connected to your spirit, right? It's connected to these things. It's like barnacle. What do you call those things? Barnacles, right? If you ever kind of look at on the post, they're all stuck on there, right? And when the tide goes down, they're all stuck on this post. That's like all these things stuck on our spirit. And behind these things that are stuck is all this energy. All this energy, because when you tap into it, you don't remove it, you feed it, right? And it's so picture all your history, all your life, it's all in there, right? All this emotion, making decisions for you, all these things that are happening at a subconscious level. And so these things are the things making you sick, because it's like when you have, anybody ever have an abscessed tooth? So there's the tooth and there's the problem, but it's the abscess that's actually going to kill you. Kind of weird. So all this free-floating stuff in there is not so free-floating. You see it's really attached. And as you start to write all these things, I was like, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff here. So the prayer is very important. So then what do we do with it? So on these inventory sheets, you can get them online you can get them online on the YouTube page in the featured stuff, or you could get it on Facebook page, right? These sheets are available. So what do you do? So you have this big list, and then what happens, what do we do with it? So it talks about here, after period, we listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we're angry. We asked ourselves why we were angry. Anybody don't know why they're angry? Oh yeah, we know why we're angry. This is a good part. You get to write about them sons of a bitch. Right? Get the pen going. I can do that. So relax. So you take the first name off the sheet, this sheet, one name. You transfer it to the first column over here. So the first column, column 1. So let's put, who we picking on, mom or dad today? Vote? Mom. Oh, mom. So we put mom down. And the cause, why am I mad here? So if you look on page 65 here, it says, I'm resentful at. See, Mr. Brown? And then it says the cause, his attention to my wife. That's 1. Told my wife of my mistress. That's 2. Brown may get my job at the office. That's 3. Brown needs his ass kicked. That's 4. No. So what happens is, you see how it's point form? It's not a story. Because as soon as you see that, you'll know the story, right? So on the next column 2, we just start filling in all the columns till I can't think of nothing left. So I may have 2 or 3 items, or I may have had 10 or 12 in association with this person. So my mom, dad, and a couple people, I filled up a whole page and a half, point form, of all these things that came to mind. I just wrote it down, point form like this, right? So it was like the guy with the blue cap, right? So I put the dog, the neighbor, right? So the story behind that, when I did my 5th, I know what that is, but if I never wrote it down, there was a lot of emotional stuff tied to it, because what happened is, when I was a kid, I just blotted it out. I was trying to get home. I was in a street gang called, that was back before the Demons, so it was some other street gang I was in Toronto, Parkdale, trying to get home so the older kids wouldn't get a hold of me, right? Because they used to like beating us up. So I tried to get home before and get into my fence, and I just made it to my fence in the laneway, and I was almost in. This kid grabbed me, started beating me up. The dog next door jumped the fence and grabbed the kid by the face. I was a police dog. Me and the police were friends. They put the dog down. I blocked it out. I didn't even think about it after that. It was so emotionally traumatic that my life has so many of those episodes. I just blotted it out. Like the traumatic event, I just buried it and carried on. So if I didn't put the blue cap down because I didn't think it was so, I realized, holy smoke, there's a lot of emotional story attached to that formulated my relationship with, may sound weird, animals from then on, right? And so with my last 2 dogs, I've had to make amends to the animal world in regards to how I treat and conduct dogs. It may sound kind of weird, but you know what I mean? Like back to the stages, but we'll get into that later. So So I got that stuff down, and then it talked about, we listed people, institutions, we asked ourselves why we're angry. So, why we were angry. Here's a good one. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore, burned up. On our grudge list, right, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal relations, or sex relations, which had been interfered with? We're usually as defined as this example. So here, the third column. So you have all these sheets done. So you have the name, all the causes. The next name, all the causes. I've got 15, 20, 30 sheets. Right? Now, I'm going to start on the third column. And I'm going to start on this process. We're going to start from top to bottom. What that means is I'm going to look at the first, these are the human instincts that kind of drive me or create the human experience. So social instinct, self-esteem, right? And personal relations is under the social instinct. I start from the top. I did only one column. And did it interfere with this, yes or no? Did this situation interfere with this, yes or no? So for me, what it kind of self-esteem meant how I felt about myself or how I thought others felt about me would affect my self-esteem. You know, you hear people say, oh, people can't make you feel anything. That's horse shit, right? Right? We can. We're very socially kind of geared with people, places, things, family, all that other stuff. Words are very impactful, especially growing up and the way people treat you and all that other stuff. Heck, they can have long-term effects, right? So self-esteem, how I feel about myself, could be affected by how other people also feel about me. Yes? So you know what your self-esteem is? How you feel about yourself, right? You feel good? Anybody? So you go from top and do all the sheets. And then personal relationship. Did this situation interfere with my personal relationship with this person? From top to bottom. Right? Relationship is so kind of, even if it was the police, well, it would affect my self-esteem. Yeah, it would affect my personal relationship. People you owe me. So it's kind of interesting. That's only the first instinct. Then when you did all that, you go to the next one. Security. You know what security is? Emotional or material. So a lot of us have friends or people, the emotional security. Does that kind of make sense? And material. You know what material security is you know that you have something in place. Either you got some money coming in here, a job, a relationship, or people on a roll. Remember in Bill's story? Right? He talked about, I had a friend in Montreal that still had money. He thought he was entitled to some of that money. Anybody think like that here? Mm-hmm. Right? And so he went, if his friend would have rejected him, you think it would have affected his security instinct, his material instinct? You think it would have affected his emotional instinct? So we see these things. So sometimes there would be stuff going in my life in early sobriety. I would think, okay, I got a welfare check coming at the end of the month. That would give me security. There's something coming in. There's something happening. Some of the things we own, we hold a lot of security in, right? Prestige, all that other stuff. Sometimes when at least I have this or I have that, or right, we comfort ourselves by the things we own. Would that create security? 100%. Okay, so we go through that list there. This is where it gets interesting. Sex instinct. Acceptable sex relationships and hidden sex relationships. Anybody know the difference? Well, I'll explain it to you in case you don't. So acceptable could be me and somebody I'm engaged in a relationship with, we're okay with it. But if somebody else found out about it, would that be hidden or would that be, depending? If I'm married and I'm engaged and I'm creating conduct with another person, it may be acceptable between me and that person, but it's also hidden, right? The joke used to be, Tony got married and they went on a honeymoon and had sex. It's like, is that acceptable? but they had a sheep involved. So it just got hidden. Right? So you see, it just went hidden. It may be acceptable between us, but I don't want you guys to know about it. So it may sound weird, but that's kind of the gauge. Well, it's okay with me. Well, hidden is I don't want other people to know about it. How would I feel if people found out about that, right? No, I know none of you saints have anything hidden in your life, right? Sorry to hear that. Okay, moving on. So then we get all that several hidden. So now, which is really interesting, so we see the example here. That's what it kind of looks like on these sheets. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. Honesty about how we seen it. Doesn't mean that that's how it happened, because a lot of our stories, did that happen like that, or was it like that, or was it like there's our version of our story, then there's everybody else's version of our story. I remember saying that to I said to my mom, it didn't happen like that. She says, we were the only ones sober here. So you had to go there, right? There's my drunk version of the story, and there's other people's sober version of the story. Anybody ever notice sometimes they're two different things? Yes. When we're finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was the world and its people were often quite wrong. Yes, that's what we're writing. Like some of this shit is real shit. Right? And some of it, like some of it we initiated, some of it is the first time, shame on them. The second time, shame on us kind of thing, right? Is why do I end up in these situations? Why do these things keep on happening? And so I start having an interesting view here is that all my instincts are like big red lights all over the place here, right? So I see why most of these problems are happening. So here we go. To conclude others were wrong as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome is that people continue to wrong us and we stayed sore. Anybody's story like that? Interesting, eh? Sometimes it was remorse. And when we were sore at ourselves, right? So the opposite of resentment is self-pity. Anybody have those two bedfellows? Resentment of self. When I'm done with you, I'll start on me. When I'm done with me, I'll start on you. Anybody have that perpetuating swinging door? It's interesting, right? How the bondage, you see now the bondage and difficulties and overcoming these things is kind of, so our brain has us, we don't have it. We're a servant to our thinking, not our thinking should be a servant to us. Big difference, right? We're starting to see here, it's like, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff going on here, right? So, but the more we fought and tried to have our way, the worse matters got. As in Victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. Anybody have that? Yeah, I showed them. And then the guilt, shame, and remorse of how you treated or how you conducted yourself, or, you blew up your life to show them. Anybody ever blow up their life to show somebody? I showed them. Yeah, twice. Yeah, I'm surprised that company's still going, right? I hope I never find you. I like this one. I remember leaving on my resentment. So you'll never find anybody like me. She says that's the plan. Wait a minute. Okay. So here we go. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment, below the surface, undetectable. So we see a lot of this stuff now has been happening there for a long time. It's been below the surface, deep. Right, and some of this stuff, when you look at it, anybody get the and it's there, like that emotion, that energy, is tied to that thing, and it just lies dormant there. And when you open the can of worms, or you open the vault to that section, or you open the door, whatever you want to say, when you take a look at it, it's like snap, cling on, snap right to the face, right, hanging on for dear life. Yeah, let's get somebody pee on it. No, sorry. Okay, I really have to go out there a bit every now and then. Okay, so to explain that life which includes deep resentment only leads to fertility and unhappiness to the precise extent that we permit these. Damn. Who's permitting all this to happen? We are. Right? That really, who wanted to argue that the first time they read that? Wait a minute, well, some of these people have been gone a long time, right? Some of this stuff's you've been carrying it for years. Who permits it? Is like the channel changer is broken. And when it comes on, when the movie comes on, we get front row seats to it. Get some popcorn. Like, I think Stephen King is one of us, eh? He writes all this stuff about the mind and things like that, right? We get front row seats to our mind, and anybody ever notice when you're in there, there's nothing else happening in your life, nothing else around you. You're in there, you're living, you're front row to your own thing, and the sound's distorted, the motions are distorted, and you're making yourself ill. And if you think long and hard enough, anybody ever get dry heaving? You hear people, I have an anxiety disorder. No, you have a thinking disorder. Anybody ever make themselves sick? Right? Dysentery, can't sleep. That's all derivative of nerves and thinking. And who does it to us? Yay! Front row ticket. Can I have those 2 seats, please? Can you reserve them? I'll be back. Okay. Oh, my God. Do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? But with the alcoholic, this is it. Right now, with the alcoholic, why we're different than these other people is this. Whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. This business of resentful is infinitely grave. Not good. We found it as fatal. God, another one of those severe words. Infinitely grave and fatal. Yeah, we read over that like, Where's the interesting parts? Infinitely grave and fatal wasn't interesting? No, right? We just skimp. Any skimp readers here? Oh, that made just total blind vision to it, right? We found this fact, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. You want to underline that. When harboring such feelings. Why? Because what we're looking at is the common manifestations, right? We're just looking at a generic view. There's a lot of other things that create these feelings that shut us off from the sunlight of the Spirit or create toxicity inside of ourselves by harboring and by permitting or visiting or kind of looking at. We can make ourselves sick through our own thinking, which is interesting, and it creates an emotional deformity attached. Like there's certain things I can't watch, right? I start becoming, beep, 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 and my wife will be from the kitchen, you watching that news again? How do you know? Because Tourette's from the living room. The dog's hiding. I'm pointing at the TV, right? And there's nothing. I'm sitting in my living room, for God's sake. Do you see how fast it can happen? Driving in traffic? Who makes you toxic? Those other people? Oh, I've been waiting for you to show up. You're late today. Right? It's us, right? Supermarket stores. You ever notice that? You're in the lineup, there's 15 items or less. Someone has 16 items because you counted them twice to make sure. And you start, like, right? And you ever notice when you get that energy, you start attracting all of them. They start coming out of the woodworks for you. Anyways, we'll leave that alone. Okay, so this is interesting. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns. Not the obsession, the insanity, the malady, oh my God, I'm drinking. How did this happen? I'm drinking. I spent all week trying to get sober. I spent the last 5 years trying to get sober. I spent all this energy trying to get sober. How am I drinking again? This isn't the plan. Anybody have that moment? Like, how did I get here again? Right? Something clicks. We're governed by something other than what we could see, feel, and touch. The malady that parallels with our sound thinking. There's a switch that happens. I can't see the switch. So that's why they're saying, hey, watch out for these things, right? That we'll kind of engage in later as a daily reprieve. But these things here are the troublesome points for us, the shutting off, right? So here we go. This is fun. The insanity, and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger, The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison, which is interesting. My wife, she could afford that dubious luxury. When we were going through something a while ago, and I won't get into it, had to do with outside things and past events. And it was like, she said, take a pen and stab him in the eye, right? And I said, oh my God, you think like that? She says, yeah, it's the human condition. Everybody thinks like that. She goes, the difference between me and you is you'll find yourself at the bottom of a bottle still thinking it's true. Somewhere along the line, something will kick in and say, this is not productive for me. I said, right? Non-productive, and she'll say, enough, like I've stayed there long enough. Now she'll do something proactive so she doesn't live in that place. I can't do that. Because once I start that, with the drive, right? Mine's after the accident. It's like, oh, sorry, I'm more over remorseful after I've gone way too far. Anybody here? Yeah. Some normal people are able to stop that before it happens. You mean you didn't burn the place down? No, okay. Okay, they may be but these things are poison. Then they use that terminology, poison. So where's this stuff derived from? Is the emotional attachment or the emotional deformity based on the thinking that I'm creating, the story that I'm narrating. The narrator's now narrating the story to me. I'm buying into it. You know that part of your brain you talk to? The narrator? You're in a meeting with them? And if you're really good, you may have a whole board of them. We all concur, right? And so the brain kind of takes over. You're in conversation with this narrator, and it's dictating how you feel, how you think, and how you're going to respond. Yes? Especially based on all past events, all at an internal level. So an internal level is making all these decisions. You're not even living in today, right? You're living in the past, reacting to today's stuff, but it's not today's stuff you're reacting to. Yay! Okay, we turn back to the list. For it held the key to the future. Here it is, right? We're looking at it. We're prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We begin to see that the world and its people really dominated us. Yes, you know what? How many hours did I spend thinking about these past events and these situations? How many times did I find myself engaged in it and without me saying, hey, I'm going to go. It's not like I go, hey, I'm going to go think about this. I'm in thinking about that. I'm in the story when I become aware of the story. I don't know how long I've been in the story for. Does that kind of make sense? And then I become aware I'm in this story, but how long? When did this story get a hold of me? How it got a hold of me? How it got me engaged? And now I become aware of it. I could have been in there a good 5 minutes because I'm halfway through the story. And we all know we like starting at the beginning of the story, right? So where am I or I'm at the end of the story of the punishing part. Let's find another way to punish them. Let's relive, re-feel, re-engage. I would have done it this way. I would have done it that way. I should have said this. I should have said that. Let's punish them again. Anybody have that kind of thinking here? So if you take one episode on there, how many years have you had some of these things? How many hours have you spent on it? Oh, my God. Right? Yay. Okay, so what's the purpose of this part of the exercise? Well, here we go. We turn back to the list for it held the key to the future. We're prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We begin to see the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real. If you believe it to be true in your mind, how that happened, it has the same effect as it happening or it didn't happen. It's the same. You can create the same emotional trauma within your own thinking. Isn't that interesting? Because how many people think about things that are not happening that create some form of anxiety? Fear, anxiety, right? You watch the news a bit and we're going to have the Third World War any time now. What's the point in saving for any kind of... Spend it all. Like, anybody get that stuff? There's nothing happening, but you've created this scenario that now you're anxiety-based, fear-driven. Because your body don't know that it isn't happening, because in your brain you created a scenario and you're creating a fight or flight instinct. Your body's getting reactive. And now you got all that energy, you don't know what to do with it, and somebody comes say hello to you and you give them all the energy. Anybody ever snap at people, short with people, irritated with people? Why? Because you're irritated with yourself and you need somebody to share it with. Who likes being pissed off alone? Let's go find somebody. We like to be depressed alone. But pissed off, let's involve somebody. Okay. Wrongdoing offense. We saw that these resentment must be mastered. But how? So what's the point of this exercise? To master resentments. Because they're going to happen. And so as they derive, as they come up, we need to reallocate this energy or dissipate it. Right? So this is the way it made sense to me. Anybody remember crock pots? You know what a crock pot, not a crack pot, a crock pot? Right? You put the lid on it, and somewhere along the line, they didn't have pressure valves on it. We better put a pressure valve in this, right? So a pressure valve releases the energy contained inside the pressure cooker, right? So at a certain point, the release valve. So that's what the kind of steps do within inside of ourselves. It starts releasing this energy that we have attached to it. When we look at it, we apply prayer. And what happens is it starts dissipating all this toxicity, all this energy, all this stuff that we carried for so many years, because we're able to see it now. We kind of feel we're becoming an observer how we change when our thinking becomes engaged in certain things. I see how it changes my emotional state and how it changes my perception. So it's interesting. So the pressure valve would be the stop, observe, pray. And what happens is now you start talking to the narrator instead of the narrator talking to you. And what does that look like? It looks like this. So it talks about here, we saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. This is what we're going to apply to who? To ourselves. To master resentments, right? Because right now, the resentments are mastering who? Us. So we're not in control of our thinking. Our thinking is in control of us. Interesting. So now we become an observer of this. For the first time, we're seeing, holy shit, right? I'm an observer of my thinking, which is interesting. Most of us are participants of our thinking. Now we're going to become an observer. Totally different seat. You're going to have to sit back a couple rows for that. Give those rows to the new people. Okay, so this was a correct. We realized that people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not notice, it didn't say alcoholics. It said people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Look at the wording. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. Interesting. So what's making them sick is resentments, fears, harms, and conducts, right? And they don't know how to master those things, and they got to involve somebody. So who do they involve? They involved us, right? Does that kind of make sense? So it's kind of interesting. So if we're going to make a change, if something's going to change from going from here forward, it has to change within inside of me. That's what they talked about. That's where the solution lies within inside of me, to have a different story or start to have a different story, right? So here we go. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant the sick friend. Where's this prayer happening? Where's this prayer happening? Inside. When is it happening? When these situations start to present themselves. So the narrator is saying, hey, look at this. And you're saying, no, they can't help themselves. What do you mean they can't help themselves? Sons of it? No, you're going to listen to me. What? Then you're going to go, God, talk to him or her, and you're going to change the narration of the story. Damn, because you're not going to permit it anymore. Oh, you're going to permit it because some of us like going there. But we realize that you're permitting and participating in how you feel, think, in your emotional state. Hey! So you get to see where you're applying prayer or not applying prayer. Those who have the most difficulty in the fourth step are the ones who don't apply prayer. They're applying self to self, which created the problem. How you feeling? Like shit, simply how I think. Sorry. Okay, so moving on, right? How many's don't people say, you made my list? I said, good. Be surprised if I didn't. Okay, so... Okay, when a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man, how can I be helpful? God save me from being angry, thy will be done. Where's all this taking place? In your thinking. As these things happen, it's like, hey, you know what? Mom, dad, all these people you had such pleasure being pissed off at, you realize you're making yourself sick. And they were sick too. It wasn't personal. It felt personal, but you're starting to see as anybody in that situation would have had the same experience. The first time, shame on them. Why did you go back there again? Because of my self-esteem, my personal relationship, right? My material, my emotional, my ambitions, my security. Why did you stay with her? Self-esteem, personal relationship, ambition, security, and hidden sex. No, just we'll leave that alone. Bah. Okay, so here we go. God save me from being angry, thy will be done. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat a sick person that way. Where's the retaliation and argument happening? Inside. Inside of ourselves. How many people have retaliation and argument going on inside? And then your face starts, and then you're at the meeting. I'm doing 417. There you go, Ray. You were wondering when that was coming in, eh? I'm doing 417. I'm letting it go, turning it over. I'm so happy to be sober. Well, somebody should inform your face of that. Because you look like you just killed 3 people. I'm happy to be sober. Oh, okay, good. Do you want what I got? No? It's okay. Okay, so here we go. We avoid retaliation. We wouldn't treat sick. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kind and tolerant view of each and every one. Damn. So what you need to do with some of these resentments that are not moving is you need to go back over their life and see why they are the way they are. And when you start seeing what their life was like, then you start having a little compassion for them. That's what I did for my dad, my mom, and some of these people that I really was resentful at, that it wasn't. I look back at their life, and it was like, oh my God, no wonder they are the way they are. Like my grandfather, my mom's side, he was back in the farming community, and when he was 9, his leg had a deformity. It stopped growing. You remember they used to have a lot of people with big shoes, right? I don't know what those. Yeah, something. Well, one leg stops growing. So he was in the bed. Imagine this. He's in the bed at 9 years old, and his deformity was really causing so much pain because his other legs are growing, and that leg isn't, right? And he's lying there, and his parents told him, if you don't get up and earn your keep, then you'll just die in that bed. They closed the door. He had to get up and earn his keep. So how bitter do you think he was? So now he's raising 14 kids, right? How bitter do you think that would have been passed on to them? Yeah. And the thing, I won't get into some of the stories, but when I looked at the stories, he was a good, hard-working man. He was hard as nails, provided for his family and all that other stuff, but he was hard, right? And how he raised his kids was very hard and to the point. So now I look at my mom and kind of go, a lot more compassion for her. Right? And then I look at me, and then I said, now I got kids. And it's like, where does it stop? Well, it stops with me. But some of it, still got a bit on them. They're doing a bit of therapy. It's okay. I said, you want something to complain about? No, I don't say that. Okay, moving on. Okay, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrong others have done, we resolutely, how do you say that? Yeah, look for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though the situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? You hear people say, our part, it doesn't matter. How did you participate or how did this thing happen? Your part, same thing. Same thing. Two guys were in a fight down the street. What was my part? I stuck my nose in it. How did I set the ball rolling? I didn't set the ball rolling. I stuck my nose in their fight. That's my part. I should mind my own business. Whatever. So it's how were you involved? Right? There we go. The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and we're willing to set these matters straight. So this is interesting. This is the fourth column. Was I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, or inconsiderate? Same thing, top to bottom. In these situations, how did they affect me? Well, a lot of these things, some of them were, it was interesting, even the trauma, the things that happened, some of it was frightened, right? Participated, closed mouth society, right? And then they talk about selfish. Some of the things I got back into is because of my doing, because of my self-esteem. So we're looking at it from this way, going that way. Based on my instincts, how did I respond and invite these other people into the situation? Damn. A lot of it is kind of, and some of it is like, if you're not sure, leave it and move on to the next one. If there is actual trauma involved, well, why am I still hanging on to it, right? Then you can seek outside help and all that stuff, do appropriate stuff. But this is not where for the mind to get trapped on itself, to talk you out of doing the rest of this thing. Go through it as honestly and as thorough as you can, right? Look at it honestly in that situation. If my self-esteem, my personal was good, or my material and my emotional, right, or my sex instinct or my ambitions, would I have been in that same situation? Would I have been selfish, inconsiderate, self-seeking, and frightened? Would I have got myself into that situation, or would I have gotten myself out of that situation if I had better self-esteem and self-worth? Interesting, right? So we see 90% of the stuff that happens to us, we engage, we invite, we create. Damn. So we went through it. So we admitted our wrongs honestly, and we're willing to set these matters straight. Where do we set these matters straight? Where do we set these matters straight? Within inside of ourselves. Remember, we've had one way of looking at things. We've had one story. Now we have an alternate story. We have a different way of looking at things. What's created this thing, where it derives from, how it came about, right? And so when the narrator tries to talk about the old way, I have a new way of looking at it. No, this is just a start. This is just, right, the prayers, right? So the third step, prayers for me, the resentment prayers for the people around me, the willingness to change my point of view, right? So get that done next week. We'll start the fears. I'm so enthusiastic. May the force be with you. Live long and prosperous. We have the seventh tradition. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. And how we close this meeting is with the third step prayer. What's the basis for a great life? God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, then may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, thy victory over them. May I bear witness to those out help, thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. And if you need extra help going over this talk will be online in the next couple days, okay?